Welcome, everyone. Welcome to Your Body Awakening series. I have with me the fabulous Dr. TaMara Griffin as our guest today. Dr. TaMara Griffin is a clinical sexologist. She is a sex therapist. She is an author, a speaker, a relationship expert. She is also the editor-in-chief of a magazine called Human Sexuality. That is the only magazine that focuses on women's sexuality and well-being. So it's so nice to have you here. Welcome.
Yes, thank you so much. I am so honored and very excited to, be a part of this awesome project that is so needed. We need to have these conversations, and I'm just ready to go ahead and dive in whenever you are.
All right, goody. I actually forgot to mention something. You also started the movement,
Yes.
hashtag How Dare I Not, and hashtag I Save Lives,
Yes.
as a response to the lack of holistic and comprehensive sexuality education. Yes. So I thought it was important that I bring that back and inform our audience about that. So yeah, let's start by talking how you got started and what made you decide to become a sexologist.
By the time I was, let's say, 13, right, I knew that I wanted to be in the field of sexuality. I actually told my mom that I wanted to be a sex therapist, and she was like, what? But she wasn't too overwhelmed because, being a therapist herself, she kind of understood what I meant when I said sex therapy. It was like, my mom was always that person, that mother to talk to myself and all of my girlfriends, about sexuality growing up. And, through our conversations and stuff like that, I realized that a lot of young women didn't have that safe space, or a mother, or auntie, or a sister, someone to talk to them and answer their questions about, sexuality. And so seeing that, in addition to the fact that myself included and a lot of my family members have reproductive health issues, and just seeing, how my mother was treated back in the day when she had endometriosis. They actually treated her like she had a mental health disorder, and because my mother was an advocate for herself and her body, she went through the proper channels to receive the treatment that she needed. But, just even as a young kid, just seeing that, I kind of vowed to never let any other woman experience those types of challenges, and to teach them how to be able to navigate, their sexual health. And so those things combine, my personal experience plus my just natural curiosity about all things sexuality, and, kind of led me down the path to wanting to learn more and study, more in the field of human sexuality. And so, here I am, loving it.
Awesome. Can you tell us about some of the recent work that you've been doing throughout the years as a clinical sexologist?
Oh my gosh. So I can do and have done everything from, individualized therapy to group sessions, relationship counseling and therapy. Also, most recently, I do a lot of speaking. I travel the country doing speaking at conventions and conducting workshops, just teaching people about healthy sexuality and what it really means to own your sexuality and be present in your body, and to just be, confident, and how all of that, is related together in terms of sexual health and confidence, the correlation in and out of the bedroom. And then, of course, I got the radio show that I'm hosting every Friday in Las Vegas on WBKE Vegas Radio. And gosh, just anything that I can do, of course, the magazine, Our Sexuality, anything that I can do, that's related to sexuality, I'm trying to do it.
I'm so glad you mentioned about being in a body and the relationship between confidence and the bedroom. I kind of want to bring it up to this book that you wrote called I Am Sex, and it is right here. Yay. It is an awesome book towards women, teaching them how they could embrace their sexuality and understanding kind of what that means.
Right.
And you have a section where you talk about the media and how it affects our sexuality. Our sexual empowerment was the term that you use, actually. Mm-hmm. So can you elaborate a little bit on how does that look? How does media affects our sexual empowerment?
Well, you know what? As a society, especially here in the United States, we are just over-sexualized and undereducated. And so to me, what that says is that there are so many messages And these messages are usually unhealthy messages. It's misinformation. It's not totally accurate. And it definitely has an impact on how we view ourselves as sexual beings. So for example, the images that we usually see about women in the media are very slim women. They look a certain way. They're built a certain way. And that creates pressure for a normal woman to, fit in. And so with that pressure of fitting in, it creates some types of challenges for us. We start to feel some type of low self-esteem, or maybe we're unhappy with our body, which creates body shaming. And so as a result, we start to have all these layers and layers and layers of stuff that we have to work through in order to feel confident in who we are as a woman. And when we're not confident in who we are as a woman and confident in our body, it creates those things, those barriers where we want to kind of push back and not be sexual because we're not confident in who we are. We don't like ourselves. We don't like our bodies. And so with that being said, like, how do we share all of this with a partner? And so it creates this kind of dynamic where, we're feeling a certain way. We don't want to communicate. We don't necessarily know how to communicate this to our partner. And we're left with this kind of weird space between empowerment and sexuality, right? And because of these messages in the media, they help to play a part, in addition to the fact that all the relationships that we see on some of the reality TVs are not necessarily the healthiest, whether it's with a mate or whether it's with a sister friend, right? And so because of all of these things, the media continues to push out these images that aren't healthy, and we see this and we feed on this. And so we become these things, whether it's subconsciously or consciously. Like I said in the beginning, whether we're at the gym 50 hours a week, trying to work out and obtain this body that's just not real, or whether we are dying literally because in the media just within the past few weeks there have been several women who have died or almost died as a result of trying to get butt injections. So it's like, what are we really focusing on here? And we're focusing on these things because this is what the media is showing us, and there's no counter message out there that's helping to counteract all these unhealthy messages that the media are portraying women to be.
Right. Yeah, that's definitely true. And it's very interesting sometimes how much of a deep effect it hits home, and sometimes it intertwines with past experience of the messages we get at home from our sexuality, basically.
Absolutely.
So how does one reclaim that? How does one gain more agency in embracing that side of themselves that's so intertwined with everything in their lives?
You know what? And it's very interesting because it goes back to something that you just said yourself. Not only is the media impacting our sexual empowerment, but the messages that we received or did not receive, as children also contribute to these layers, is what I call them, of stuff that we have to kind of peel back in order to really get to our authentic self and to really begin to tap into our authentic power. And so I think some of that starts by forums like this one, projects like this one, and just conversations and normalizing sexuality in society and what it really looks like from a healthy perspective, and just realizing that we're all individuals. So what works for me may not necessarily work for another woman or another individual. So it's about really digging deep within and doing the work. I mean, you got to do the work. You have to face your stuff, and it's tough. It's tough to face your stuff, right? I do it every day. I'm like, TaMara, look, hey, you got to get through this process, because the only way to make things work is to really dig deep and really reflect and to really push through it and to really be honest with yourself. That's the only way to become authentic. And so you have to be able to do that work. And also another thing that I know that works for me, I do a lot of journaling activities and reflections and things like that, and really just pressing myself to move forward. Also, just sometimes you might have to go talk to a therapist. I'm an advocate for therapists, not just because I am a therapist, but because sometimes you need that outside perspective to help you put things into check, to really help you say, is this really real or not? And that outside perspective helps to bring in that balance sometimes. And it helps to reframe and to help to reshape how you may see things. So I'm definitely an advocate, for therapy. And just really, 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 again, I can't talk about the importance of being authentic. That's the first step to empowerment, is being authentic to who you are. And there's so many wonderful books out there, including one of my books called Live Inspired, Feel Empowered, which is about empowering your consciousness and what that looks like, and looking at all these things like self-defeating behaviors, looking at intergenerational patterns, looking at the media and messages and things that we're taught and we're fed, and really dissecting them and see how they relate or not relate to you. So I mean, it's just so many different ways out there to empower yourself. But the key to it is that you have to be authentic, and you have to be willing to do the work and press through the hard stuff.
Yeah, it's not an easy task.
No. It is not.
Being honest with ourselves, meaning also taking responsibility
Yes.
of the experiences we had also.
Yes.
Which is takes courage for that. Yeah, absolutely. It's a journey indeed. So I'm wondering, in terms of the women that come, the clients that you receive, what are some of probably the issues or concerns they come to you with that are actually obstructing them from being in their bodies and experiencing pleasure the way they desire to experience pleasure?
I think when a lot of women come to me, one of the most common concerns is that they've gained weight, and they just don't feel sexy anymore. They don't feel sensual. They don't feel like they used to feel when they were, I guess, a little bit lighter, to use some of their terminology. Also, a lot of women come to me who've had hysterectomies or some other type of, like endometriosis, another female reproductive health condition that tends to kind of weigh on them after they've had this surgery, so again, they don't feel sexy, or they're concerned that intercourse is going to change because of the result, or they're not going to result of the results of the surgery, or they feel like they're not going to be able to orgasm because of having a hysterectomy, because of those hormones and things that may have shifted, especially if they have gotten their ovaries removed. So they go right into, a premenopausal state. And so they're concerned about all these different things. And so usually, when they come to me, those are some of the major concerns, and they don't feel present, in their body, because their body has in so many ways have failed them, especially women who've had hysterectomies. A lot of times what I hear is that they don't feel like a woman anymore, because they are not able to do the one thing that a woman is supposed to be able to do, which is to have children. And again, here's one of these media messages that we get, you're not a woman. If you can't have a child, you're not a woman at all. So, it's those types of things that we have to work through and peel back, usually when women come to me and they're experiencing, some of those issues of shame and things like that, and of not being present in their body because of these types of conditions and situations.
And what have you seen has worked for them in terms of pushing through that, passing through that?
One of the things we work on is redefining womanhood. Like, what does that mean? What does it really truly mean to be a woman? What does it really truly mean to be a female? What is it really to be present in your body? Like, what does that look like, and how does it feel? And so really working through those things and kind of just unlearning what we've learned about sexuality and what it means to be a woman. Again, those media messages keep coming back. And those family patterns keep coming back, so it's about really looking at that and redefining them for yourself, because, as children, we can't help what we're taught. But as adults, we have an opportunity, especially when we're shown something different, to really, really explore that. And so it's really about sitting them down and saying, okay, what have you learned? Okay, drop all of that. Now let's look at relearning, a re-education of sexuality, sensuality, and womanhood, and make it more specific to who you are and where you are at this moment in time. Because we're taught to do sex, to have sex one way, and that's the only way, and it's the right way. When that is the way, that way does not necessarily work for everybody, because we're individuals. And so we have to really look at our individual sexuality, our womanhood, and how that plays out for us where we are at this moment in time. Because how we had sex when we're 20, we may or may not have sex like that when we're 50, or even when we're 25. And so it's about understanding our body and how it shifts and changes throughout the times, right? Because our sexuality, all of that stuff is fluid. It's not fixed, but society likes to teach us that it's this way or it's no way. And so it's really about a re-education of societal messages and those intergenerational patterns and media messages and spiritual messages, like all these things that we learned. Sometimes we have to just drop them off, unpack them, and just pack something new.
Mm-hmm. It's deprogramming.
Exactly. Right. Yeah.
And you know what's interesting is that sometimes we have that gut feeling. We have that something is off, but I guess it's because it's coming from, the messages are coming from so many corners that we kind of repress in a way what we know that feels good or that's better for us.
Right. Yeah, it's one of the things that I've learned personally, as well as working with my clients. It's very hard to be authentic to yourself. When you have those competing messages, it takes a lot of courage, it takes a lot of bravery, it takes strength. And sometimes even when some of those messages are coming from your partner, and those that are closest to you, you have to be able to kind of push back in order to continue to be authentic to yourself. And sometimes that's very difficult for us to do as individuals, even myself, and so it's not a one-time thing is what I want people to understand. This may be a step-by-step process every hour, every day, every couple of days, until it becomes like breathing to you, until it becomes that very, I try to stay away from the word normal, because anything that is not normal, or deemed normal is abnormal. Who wants to be abnormal, right? So I try to say, until it feels more natural to you, until it becomes a part of who you are, it's something that you have to do. Like the old saying, you got to fake it until you make it. And sometimes that is so true, until something becomes so embedded in you that is who you are, so it's not a one-time thing. And sometimes what happens with people, and especially a lot of the ladies that I work with, if it doesn't happen the first time or the second time they try it, they become defeated. And I don't want people to walk away feeling defeated, because you're not going to get it necessarily the first time or the second time or the third time, but that doesn't mean you should quit or that it's not for you. It just means that sometimes you have to push through and persevere a little bit harder in order to get to your goals.
Yeah. Because we got stuck in our habits. I absolutely love like everything that you're saying right now.
Oh, thank you.
It's like so perfect right now.
Thank you.
I'm hearing a lot of things that are coming up, confidence, self-esteem, body shame. And I'm wondering, when it comes to talking with our partners, like let's get into relationships. When it comes to talking to our partners about how we feel about ourselves, and even how we want to be satisfied sexually, like it could be a sticky situation.
Absolutely, yes.
Like, so what are different ways that people can go, what are different ways that people can adopt in order to facilitate and make it a little bit easier for them to just communicate that with their partner?
Well, the one thing you don't want to do is in the midst of the sex play. Like things are getting hot and heavy. It's about to go down. You know what I'm saying? You don't want to be in that moment like, I hate the way my breasts look. Or you don't want to say, I hate when you do X, Y, Z. You want to pick a time that's a very, I don't want to say convenient time, because no time may be convenient, but you definitely don't want to do it in the midst of sex play. You want to do it at a time where you're relaxed, that person is relaxed, and there's no interruptions. Like, you don't want that person to be in the throes of posting on Facebook or playing Minecraft or anything like that. You want their undivided attention, maybe over a nice dinner or something like that, or just carve out some time to say, hey, I want to talk to you about X, Y, and Z, right? But then you also want to do it in a very loving way. You don't want to say, I hate when you touch me right there. It doesn't feel good. You might want to use a softer approach, a more loving approach, and stroke the ego a bit and say, hey, when you do X, Y, and Z, I love it, and it feels so good to me. I would love to have more of that. The other thing that you do, it doesn't please me or turn me on as much as this. So you're telling them what you want without really saying, I hate when you do this. And because nobody wants to be told that they're doing something wrong. So you want to always start with something that's right. Or you can use a video series like this one that you're creating, like, hey, why don't you sit back and watch this with me? What do you think about what Dr. TaMara said right there? Or, hey, in her book, she said X, Y, and Z. I like that. What do you think about that? Is that something that you might like to try? Oh, you would? Great. Or, oh, you don't? Well, why not? Or things like that. So you always want to try to take ownership of what it is that you want, ownership of what it is that you feel, right? And not really point out what the other person is doing wrong, because that will surely put them on the defensive. Like, what do you mean? we do ourselves and our partner a disservice a lot of times because we think that they know how to please us and that they should, because we're all adults and we all know how to have sex, right? No, that's not the case, because what worked for someone else may not work for you. And you have to be willing to teach. Like, I have to really just lay it out to some women sometimes, and even some men, like, yes, you do have to teach somebody how to please you, because a lot of times they're like, I shouldn't have to teach nobody. I'm not teaching nobody how to please me, but you should, because that's why you're upset. That's why you're upset right now, because you didn't have the conversation with them. You didn't tell them what you wanted and what you needed. You can't expect someone to make, to assume. You can't assume that someone automatically knows just because we're an adult and they've had sex before. Right? So you have to really invest some time in the relationship and teach someone what you like and what you don't like, because the only way that you're going to know that you're going to get the pleasure that you want, and the only way that you're going to know that they know how to please you is if you tell them. Right? And then when it comes to talking about our body and how we feel about our body, what I've learned personally, as well as with working with clients, what we see, our partners very rarely see. And so sometimes we may be bringing up an issue that they are not even aware of. And they're like, why is she talking about she's fat? She doesn't look fat to me. And so then they think we're just making up something, right? Because they don't see it the way that we see it. And then that sometimes causes an issue between us and our partner, because they're like, well, why are you bringing that up? You don't look that way. Well, how come? So it starts a whole chain of reaction. So sometimes it's something that you want to work through. Some things we just don't always need to bring forward to our partner.
Okay.
Unless it's directly causing a situation between us and our partner. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Sorry. Okay, sorry. And so, sometimes we have to just work through some of our body issues and those things that we're concerned about, unless it's directly impacting our relationship with our partner. And then it might be a conversation such as, I'm experiencing some things in my body that I just kind of need to work through for myself. And if you have a loving and a supportive partner, then they should be willing to understand that there's just some things that you need to do for yourself and to work on for yourself.
Yeah, I really loved when you spoke about our partners not knowing what we want, because it seems like that's like the expectation that we grow up with for some reason. And it actually causes, I was having a conversation with a sibling of mine, and it actually causes more like distress and stress when you come to the bedroom, because you have the guy, if you're in a heterosexual relationship, trying to live up to a standard that he please his woman, and the woman here probably being dissatisfied, saying, what is happening? Why isn't he pleasing me the way I want to be pleased?
Right.
Communication, absolutely right. Oh my gosh.
And also, a lot of times we forget that we are active participants in our pleasure. So it's nobody's responsibility to please you. You have to get your pleasure. You have to be just as active as your partner, be it a male or be it a female, in the sex play. You can't just lay back and say they're not pleasing me. You have to be responsible for getting your own sexual pleasure. And part of that is being present, showing up in the moment, and also actively communicating what it is that you need.
Absolutely. We're coming to an end of our interview. I wanted to know, I have one last question.
Okay.
Because in I Am Sex, you also, we just mentioned about being present in our body, but you also mentioning about knowing our body as it comes to our reproductive system or menstrual cycle. Can you kind of talk about why is that important?
It's very simple. If you think about it this way, right? I always use this analogy. We get cell phones, right? And we just take them out and we just start dialing. We don't take time to read instructions. So we don't know all of the capabilities our cell phones can do, are the way that we can use them, right? And so our bodies are the same way. If you don't know your parts and how they function, then how can you begin to experience optimal pleasure? Or how can you even have an informed conversation with your physician about your body if you don't even know the body parts and how they function? And when I say the parts, I'm talking about correct terminology, because unfortunately, a lot of doctors are not culturally competent. They don't demonstrate cultural humility, and they don't understand vernacular and slang sometimes. So if you go in there saying like, it hurts down there could be anything, so you have to be empowered enough and informed enough and educated enough to say, my vagina is experiencing blah, 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 or there is some type of green, yucky, fluid coming out of my vagina, and I know that that's not natural for my body.
Yes.
So that's why it's so important to know your body. Also, there's no reason that you shouldn't understand how your body works. And unfortunately, we don't have sex education in schools anymore. So our young women are not learning about menstrual cycles because they're not learning about it in school. They don't talk about it at home. The churches are not talking about it. So now you have a fourth grader, 9 or 10-year-old sitting in class getting her menstrual cycle, and she doesn't know what the heck is going on. So she's freaking out thinking she's dying. That shouldn't be happening. We should be able to talk to our kids, our babies, starting at an early age about hygiene, good touch, bad touch, helping them to become present in their body and loving their body and not shame on their body. Because when we call something private, that helps people to, in their mind, to begin to form that there's something shameful about that. There's something that I must keep private to myself. And so we send all these different messages, even when they're kids. So we have to look at how we're having this conversation and why we're having this conversation. We're having the conversation to help them become comfortable with their body, to help them to remove any shame or stigma that's attached to their body. Because when we don't love ourselves, when we have that shame and that stigma attached to our bodies, we most likely put ourselves at risk for unintended pregnancies, HIV, and other types of harm to our body. And so we have to teach from an early age how to respect, love, and embrace our body. We only get one body. We can't trade it in. We don't get a 30-day, trial period on our body. And so we have to love it. We have to respect it. And we have to teach that from an early age. And unfortunately, we don't have these conversations for a variety of reasons. The stigma and the taboos that's attached to sexuality and even our body. And so here we are with projects like yours, trying to create awareness and help people understand the importance of loving your body and the importance of owning your sexuality. Because again, all of these things correlate and translate to our lives every day, all day. So that, yeah.
Yes. And I have to say, it is because of people like you that are leading the way. Because when I first discovered you, I'm like, okay, I need to be like her. Like, I love everything that you've been doing. I've been following every time you had a book come out. I've been following you, and like, you're a role model. I appreciate what you do. And yes, before I want you to share about your radio station, because you're coming back on May 5th. Is that correct? Yes. If you could tell us.
Yes, I am coming back. The Dr. TaMara show is coming back May 5th. Yes, on WBKE Vegas Radio from 4 to 6 o'clock, and that's Pacific Standard Time. And it's just it's WBKEVegasRadio.com, or you can download the WBKE Vegas media app to your phone and listen to it that way. Or, we'll be doing live streaming on Facebook, so you can catch. I got all kind of ways for you to watch this show. And it's just conversations about love, relationships, sex. We hit them hard. We tackle the taboo, reduce the stigma, and just have a great time, because the purpose of this show is to really get the conversations about sexuality out in society in a very different way, because I'm about, like you said at the beginning, I'm about saving lives. Pleasure is great, but I have to save your life before you can experience any pleasure. And so, it's just, we just talk about everything. And so it's really a great show, if I say so myself. I'm very excited. My co-host, I have a couple co-hosts on there with me. And so we hit them hard, and it's raw and it's real.
I actually agree, because I was listening to it when you were staring on the radio show. So yes, I encourage our audience to go check it out, please. It's really good. So I know that you have a gift for our audience.
Yes.
Please tell us what it is.
The gift is the very first section of my book, Live Inspired, Feel Empowered. And I encourage everyone to go read it. It's basically Live Inspired, Feel Empowered. The acronym is LIFE. And so it's really about our life and how engaging in unhealthy relationships can destroy you, mind, body, spirit, and soul. And it looks at like, why do we even get into the relationships in the first place? And why do we stay? And then it takes a step further, like, how do we get out? But more importantly, how can we prevent ourselves from engaging in these types of relationships in the future once we get out? And so it's based on my personal story of being married in an abusive relationship, and what I did to get out of that relationship, because it pretty much, it pretty much destroyed me, like to the point of I was about to kill somebody or I was going to kill myself. So something had to be done. And so I looked at all of the things that I did to get out of that relationship. And I had to ask myself, like, why? Because the thing about it is, I felt like I knew better, college educated, come from a great family. I'm a Christian woman, so how in the hell, excuse me, do I end up in a relationship that's destroying me where I'm being abused? Like, I should know better, because I was all about women's empowerment anyway, and I ended up in this relationship. So I had to, again, goes back to what I was talking about, be authentic to myself and do the work. And so Live Inspired, Feel Empowered is the result of this work that I did. And it's like my story, and then it's also some commentary, and then it's a workbook at the end. So it's actually the activities that I did to really get myself out of this relationship, looking at emotional, spiritually, socially, mentally, and physically, the things that I could do in these different areas again, to like empower myself. So I really encourage not just women, but men to read this as well, because a lot of men that I've worked with have found this book to be very helpful for themselves, but helpful in terms of helping them to understand their female partners, or even their mothers and their sisters, and why they may be in the relationships, and even how to help them begin to navigate those relationships.
I appreciate that. I actually had to recommend someone your book.
Oh wow, well, thank you.
Mel, I recommended your book so he could understand his partner easier. So
yeah, well, thank you.
So thank you for being
Yes.
with us. Thank you for sharing your time and your valuable information. Yes. Until next time.
Yes. I look forward to it anytime.
Yes. All righty.